This program is supported by SMC Global Power.
Hello, I'm Alma Angeles, and you're watching Eagle News International. Good evening, CJ.
Good evening, Alma, and good evening to everyone joining the broadcast. Here are tonight's headlines.
3 white men were found guilty of murder Wednesday for shooting dead an African-American man after chasing him in their pickup trucks, following a racially charged trial in the southern U.S. state of Georgia that gripped the nation.
More than 100,000 people have died of COVID-19 in Germany since the start of the pandemic.
At least 27 migrants trying to reach England from France died on Wednesday when their boat sank off the northern French coast, the deadliest disaster since the Channel became a hub for clandestine crossings.
And Australia rushed peacekeepers to the Solomon Islands Thursday, hoping to quell riots that threatened to topple the Pacific nation's government and left its capital ablaze.
First in our news, 3 white men were found guilty of murder for shooting dead an African-American man after chasing him in their pickup trucks, following a racially charged trial in the southern U.S. state of Georgia that gripped the nation. Travis McMichael, who shot Ahmed Arbery, his father Gregor McMichael, and their neighbor William Roddy Bryan, who took part in the chase, were all convicted of multiple counts of murder, aggravated assault, and false imprisonment. Take a look.
Verdict is as follows. In the Superior Court of Glenn County, State of Georgia, the State of Georgia versus Travis McMichael, case number CR 000433. Jury verdict form. Count 1, malice murder. We, the jury, find Travis McMichael guilty. Count 2, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 3, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 4, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty. Count 5, felony murder. We, the jury, find the defendant Travis McMichael guilty.
Now, the jury was shown a video of the McMichaels pursuing Arbery in their truck and Bryan chasing him in his own vehicle while filming on his cell phone. At one point, Arbery attempts to run around the front of the McMichael stopped truck. Now, Travis McMichael, who had gotten out of the vehicle, opens fire with a 12-gauge shotgun. A wounded Arbery is seen struggling with McMichael before being killed by another shot. During the trial, the defendant said they suspected Arbery was a burglar who had been active in their neighborhood and invoked a since-repealed state law that allows ordinary citizens to make arrests. But prosecutors said they had no justification for attempting to detain Arbery and never told him they were trying to arrest him as he jogged through their Satilla Shores neighborhood on a Sunday afternoon, or through their Satilla Shores neighborhood. Arbery's mother, Wanda Cooper Jones, said she never thought this day would come.
It's been a long fight. It's been a hard fight, but God is good.
Yes, he is. Okay.
Early in, to tell you the truth, I never saw this day back in 2020. Mm-hmm. I never thought this day would come.
For real, all life matters.
All life. Yes.
Not just black children. We don't want to see nobody go through this.
Amen.
I don't want to see no daddy watch a kid get lynched and shot down like that. That's right, Mom. So it's all our problem. It's all our problem. So, hey, let's keep fighting.
And the verdict today was a verdict based on the facts.
Yes.
Based on the evidence.
Yes.
And that was our goal, was to bring that to that jury so that they could do the right thing. Because the jury system works in this country. And when you present the truth to people and they can see it, they will do the right thing. And that's what this jury did today in getting justice for Ahmaud Arbery.
A predominantly white jury in Brunswick, Georgia, deliberated for less than 12 hours over 2 days before delivering their verdicts. Travis Michael, 35, Gregory Michael, 65, a retired police officer, and Brian, 52, face potential life in prison for the February 2020 shooting of the 25-year-old Arbery. The McMichaels and Brian are also facing federal hate crimes charges in a case that will go to trial in February. President Joe Biden hailed the verdict but said hard work remains in combating racism in America.
The World Health Organization has said that some countries and communities have fallen into a false sense of security that vaccines have ended the pandemic. Director General Dr. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus is now advising the vaccinated to remain socially distant and continue wearing masks amid a surge in COVID cases in Europe. Take a look.
Last week, more than 60% of all reported cases and deaths from COVID-19 globally were once again in Europe. The sheer number of cases is translating to unsustainable pressure on health systems and exhausted health workers. In many countries and communities, we're concerned about the false sense of security that vaccines have ended the pandemic and that people who are vaccinated do not need to take any other precautions. Vaccines save lives, but they do not fully prevent transmission. Data suggests that before the arrival of the Delta variant, vaccines reduced transmission by about 60%. With Delta, that has dropped to about 40%. If you're vaccinated, you have a much lower risk of severe disease and death. But you're still at risk of being infected and of infecting others. We cannot say this clearly enough. Even if you're vaccinated, continue to take precautions to prevent becoming infected yourself and to infecting someone else who could die. That means wearing a mask, maintaining distance, avoiding crowds, and meeting others outside if you can, or in a well-ventilated space inside. And we continue to call on all governments to implement a comprehensive and tailored approach of public health and social measures to prevent transmission, take the pressure off health systems, and save lives. While Europe is again the epicenter of the pandemic, no country or region is out of the woods. It's important for all countries to surge their capacities now to ensure the right measures are in place to avert the worst consequences of any future wave.
The issue will eventually be less of a supply side issue, but really a prioritization issue, and making sure that we're solving the problem of finding the people who have no doses before we prioritize those who already have 2 doses. And remember, this is not a phenomenon just of low-income countries. Also, in much of of Europe, where we're seeing the current outbreak, much of that is being driven by the unvaccinated, of course, and many of the people ending up in ICUs who are dying are unvaccinated folks. So the first priority everywhere has got to be reaching the unvaccinated, most highly vulnerable populations. Eventually, we will need to get to boosters to sustain immunity. It looks more and more, but at this point, there's still an awful lot of unvaccinated people out there.
In the U.S., a worrying sign as coronavirus cases again start to rise in most states, and experts are warning that this could be the start of an extended winter surge. In the past 2 weeks, the 7-day daily average of new cases increased nearly 30%, according to figures from Johns Hopkins University. The United States is reporting nearly 100,000 new infections per day. According to Newsweek, last Friday was the busiest day for travelers. since the start of the pandemic, as more than 2.2 million people went through airport security. From Friday to Monday, double the number of travelers flew in the U.S. compared with the same days last year. The fresh worsening of the coronavirus pandemic in the U.S. comes as temperatures cool during the approach of winter, forcing people indoors where the virus is believed to spread more readily and may presage another wave.
More than 100,000 people have died of COVID-19 in Germany since the start of the pandemic. A public health agency announced that today. Europe's largest economy is battling a fresh surge in coronavirus cases and recorded 351 fatalities in the past 24 hours, bringing the total death toll to 100,119, according to figures from the Robert Koch Institute. As infections reach a record high and intensive care units fill up, the health crisis is posing an immediate challenge to the new coalition government set to take over from Angela Merkel's cabinet. Some hospitals are already facing an acute overload that has made it necessary to transfer COVID patients abroad, said Gernot Marx, head of the German Interdisciplinary Association for Intensive Care and Emergency Medicine. Germany last week announced tougher COVID curbs, including requiring people to prove they are vaccinated, cured, or have recently tested negative for the virus before they can travel on public transport or go into the workplace. Several of the worst-hit areas have gone further and ordered new shutdowns. The spike has ignited a fierce debate in Germany about whether to follow Austria's example and make vaccination mandatory for all citizens. Incoming Chancellor Olaf Scholz has voiced support for mandatory jabs and said his new government will invest 1 billion euros in bonuses for healthcare workers on the front lines of the pandemic.
Staying in Germany, a center-left-led alliance of parties on Wednesday announced a deal to form Germany's new government, with surging coronavirus infections posing an immediate crisis for the post-Angela Merkel cabinet to tackle. 2 months after the Social Democrats beat Merkel's conservative CDU-CSU bloc in a general election, they concluded a roadmap on plans for Germany's next 4 years with the Greens and Liberal Free Democrats that will install Finance Minister Olaf Scholz, 63, as chancellor. Within Germany, calls have grown for the new coalition to take swift action to curb a surging fourth wave of the pandemic as hospital beds fill up and new infections soar to record highs day after day. In a sign of urgency, Merkel, who is retiring from politics after 4 terms, summoned the new coalition's top brass for pandemic talks Tuesday. Scholz said his incoming government will set up a crisis team to fight the pandemic and pledged to spend €1 billion on bonuses for health workers in hospitals and care homes who have been on the front lines of the crisis.
Sweden's Prime Minister-elect Magdalena Andersson on Wednesday handed in her resignation hours after being appointed by Parliament after her budget failed to pass and the Junior Green Party quit the coalition government. Take a look.
Miljöpartiet har ju nu meddelat att de inte längre vill ingå i regeringen. Här måste ju varje parti göra sina vägval. Och enligt konstitutionell praxis så bör en koalitionsregering avgå om ett parti lämnar regeringen. Min bedömning är ju att motsvarande naturligtvis måste gälla även när riksdagen har valt en ny statsminister, men den nya regeringen ännu inte har tillträtt.
While her stint was unexpectedly brief, Andersson made history by becoming the first woman elected to the post of Prime Minister in Sweden. She was to formally take over on Friday. The 54-year-old economist who has served as finance minister for the past 7 years said she hoped to be elected to the position again soon as the head of a minority government made up of only the Social Democrats. Just hours earlier, Parliament had elected Anderson after she clinched a last-minute deal with the Left Party to raise pensions in exchange for its crucial backing in Wednesday's vote in Parliament. Anderson quit after her budget was rejected and the Greens walked away from her coalition. However, she has said she would return, or she would like to return, so Swedes may yet get to see how a heavy metal fan nicknamed Bulldozer could lead the country.
Meanwhile, the Swiss will vote on Sunday on the country's COVID-19 laws after a campaign characterized by unprecedented levels of hostility in the wealthy Alpine nation, including even death threats. Like in much of Europe, Switzerland has seen growing anger over restrictions and vaccine pressure aimed at reining in the pandemic. But in a country renowned for its culture of compromise and where referendums take place every few months in a climate of civility and measured debate, the soaring tensions around the upcoming vote have come as a shock. Police have upped security around a number of politicians, Health Minister Alain Berset included, who have faced a flood of insults and death threats. Opponents insisted a new vote was needed on amendments to the COVID law, which, among other things, provide the legal basis for the so-called COVID certificate, indicating that a person has been vaccinated or has recovered from the disease. Some opponents have said the certificate, which has been required since September for access to restaurants and other indoor spaces and activities, is creating an apartheid system.
At least 27 migrants trying to reach England from France died on Wednesday when their boat sank off the northern French coast, the deadliest disaster since the Channel became a hub for clandestine crossings. President Emmanuel Macron vowed France would not allow the Channel to become a cemetery and also spoke to British Prime Minister Boris Johnson to agree on stepping up efforts to thwart the traffickers blamed for the surge in crossings. Take a look.
Je veux ici dire que les premiers responsables de cette ignoble situation sont les passeurs, c'est-à-dire des criminels qui, pour quelques milliers d'euros, organisent des traites d'êtres humains d'Irak, d'Afghanistan, d'Afrique, d'Asie, et qui ensuite utilisent ces personnes, les font venir en Belgique, aux Pays-Bas, en France surtout, pour traverser la Manche et pour aller en Grande-Bretagne. C'est ces passeurs qu'il nous faut combattre. Plus de 1500 ont été interpellés, arrêtés depuis le 1er janvier. Et 4 passeurs aujourd'hui, dont nous soupçonnons qu'ils peuvent être directement en lien avec ce passage de cette embarcation de fortune, ont été arrêtés, dont 2 sont aujourd'hui en décision de déferment devant le tribunal.
They have suffered. But I also want to say that this disaster underscores how dangerous it is to cross the Channel in this way. And it also shows how vital it is that we now step up our efforts to break the business model of the gangsters who are sending people to sea in this way. And I say to our partners across the Channel, now is the time for us all to step up, to work together, to do everything we can to break these gangs who are literally getting away with murder.
French officials said earlier 3 helicopters and 3 boats were searched or had searched the area, uncovering corpses and people unconscious in the water after a fisherman sounded the alarm. The disaster, the worst single loss of life since at least 2018, when migrants began using boats en masse to cross the Channel, comes as tensions grow between London and Paris over the record numbers of people crossing. Britain has urged tougher action from France to stop migrants from making the voyage. The issue has added to growing post-Brexit tensions between Britain and France, with a row on fishing rights also still unresolved.
In other news, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu said on Wednesday that the country needed to further develop its armed forces in the face of increased NATO activity on its borders. The difficult military and political situation in the world and the increased activity of NATO countries near the Russian borders require further quality development of the armed forces, according to Shoigu, telling this to officials in a televised remark. Among the Russian armed forces priorities are increasing their effectiveness, maintaining the combat readiness of nuclear forces, and strengthening the potential of non-nuclear deterrent forces, according to the defense minister. Western countries have this month raised the alarm over reported Russian military activity near Ukraine, with the U.S. saying it has real concerns over a new troop buildup on the border. Moscow has dismissed mounting Western claims that Russia may be preparing to invade Ukraine and says any military buildup is a response to growing NATO activity near its border. On Tuesday, Shoigu accused Washington of sending its bombers to practice a nuclear strike on Russia from the east and the west during its Global Thunder military exercises. Renewed Western fears about Russia's plans in eastern Ukraine have come amid a clash over an unexpected migrant crisis on the border with Kremlin-aligned Belarus and EU member Poland.
Russian President Vladimir Putin fired the head of the country's prison service on Thursday. The Kremlin said that in a statement after harrowing videos of torture and rape inside a jail were leaked. Take a look. Now, Putin dismissed Alexander Kalashnikov, who has been targeted by Western sanctions over the jailing of Kremlin critic Alexei Navalny with immediate effect. He served as prison chief for only 2 years. The Russian leader appointed Arkady Gustev, a police colonel from the Interior Ministry, in his place. The move comes after rights groups published dozens of videos of torture from inside a prison in the central city of Saratov last month. They were smuggled out of the facility by a former inmate, Sergei Savelnev, who has since fled Russia and asked for asylum in France. Earlier this month, Russia's prison service said it had dismissed 18 officials in the Saratov region in connection with the videos and opened several probes. The Kremlin had previously called for the case to be investigated.
At least 11 people are dead and dozens still missing underground after an accident at a Russian coal mine in Siberia today, according to officials. There were 285 people inside the Vyashchnya mine in the Kemerovo region near the town of Belovo when the accident occurred, according to local governor Sergei Sivilev on Telegram. There was no official statement on the cause of the accident at the mine, where a methane blast in 2004 killed 13 people. At least 11 people died on today's accident and 46 remained underground, Sivilev said in a statement on the local government's website. He said in a video on Telegram that there was no communication with the people underground. And local investigators said smoke spread across the mine at around 8:35 in the morning local time today. They said that based on preliminary information, a number of workers suffered smoke poisoning. The Vyashchnya mine was set up in 1956 and is owned by the SDS Ugol company based in the city of Kemerovo.
Australia rushed peacekeepers to the Solomon Islands Thursday, hoping to quell riots that threatened to topple the Pacific nation's government and left its capital ablaze. Take a look.
It is not the Australian government's intention in any way to intervene in the internal affairs of the Solomon Islands. That is for them to resolve. I've made that very clear. Our presence there does not indicate any position on the internal issues of the Solomon Islands. The situation remains volatile with reasonably large crowds on the move. The Royal Solomon Islands police force has been stretched. As of an hour ago, we have received reports of more buildings burning on the main road in the centre of Honiara, including a large commercial building and a bank branch. And we've agreed to send a detachment of up to 23 AFP personnel who are deploying immediately, in fact, even as we speak, to support riot control, and up to 50 further AFP will deploy to support security at critical infrastructure. Our Pacific family is very dear to us as Australians. It's very dear to us. And we have always been there to help our Pacific family when they have needed us. And this is such a time.
Thousands of protesters in the capital, Honiara, have defied the government lockdown order and taken to the streets to demand the removal of Prime Minister Manasseh Sogavare. The recipe for the crisis is a complex mix of youth unemployment, anger over anti-coronavirus controls, historical inter-island rivalries, and a festering dispute over whether the Solomon Islands should have switched diplomatic recognition from Taiwan to China. The Solomon Islands has struggled repeatedly with ethnic tensions and political violence since gaining independence from Britain in 1978. In the late 1990s, Guadalcanal militants launched attacks on settlers, particularly targeting those from Maleta, and for 5 years, unrest brought the country to its knees. The so-called tensions only eased when the deployment of an Australian-led peacekeeping mission named the Regional Assistance Mission to the Solomon Islands. But Maleta residents continue to complain that their island is neglected by the central government.
And the news continues here on Eagle News. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Some 230 migrants forced their way through the border from Belarus with the help of Belarusian border guards, but were immediately sent back across, according to Poland. Border Guard spokeswoman Anna Michalska told Polish news agency PAP that the migrants destroyed the fence and a group of 232 people made their way several meters into Polish territory. In a statement, Polish border guards said the migrants threw rocks and sticks at Polish forces as Belarusian forces used lasers and strobe lighting to try and blind Polish officers. The border guard spokeswoman said 5 migrants were taken to hospital suffering from exhaustion. The border guard said there were a total of 375 attempted crossings from Belarus on Wednesday. Aid groups say at least 11 migrants have died on both sides of the border since the crisis began in the summer and have criticized the Polish government over its policy of pushing migrants back.
For weeks, thousands of migrants have gathered at the Belarus border with Poland, enduring freezing temperatures and terrible conditions. The West has accused Belarus of artificially creating the crisis by bringing in would-be migrants from abroad and taking them to the border with promises of an easy crossing into the European Union. Belarus has denied the claim, instead criticizing the EU for not taking in the migrants. Take a look.
No go to Poland. We are go to Germany. Germany is life. No Poland. Everyone here. Children, baby, women. Everyone here.
I want to save my life. Not more, just save my life. In back is very dangerous, it's very dangerous. I want to stay here, I'm dying back here.
لا شريك له له الملك وله الحمد يحيي ويميت وهو
Dużo nadzieję, że kontynuuje swoje studia, które zaczął będąc tam w obozie dla uchodźców w Jordanii. On po prostu szukał tego, czego każdy chłopak z marzeniami szukał, ale nie udało mu się. Śmierć jednak była szybsza.
بري مش مشكلة أنا حموض أي وقع ضوية
روبرود بالدنيا بر سرمایشی أوضاعنا خوشتر دبن بامرني زيادة تردبي يعني ظروف قلكي زحمة ترجي وكل وتنها تماما درباس كري ظروفين زحمة ترين يعني درما قلكي زيادة بي يعني أنها قدينها برندا مش باكي دبكن بوزة جوي بيدي قلكي جمدية وزاروكي كوشك بعالم إرهانا يعني عالم بخارن بآفن
طبعا هر روج محاولات هبون امشيدور درباس كن درباس من طرفي بولونيا ام درباس مو ماشيين 5 كيلومتر 6 كيلومتر يعني انا 6 كيلومتر ام ماشيين نار هذا الباب يعني هل ان شاء الله شيء قربونينا دور مي متريبو وزانين مناطق في اوسط جبلين يعني اب قاعات جبلين انا نعودي باجوا يقولوا والسرما وانا المهم نخشي هذا الشيء مرة نخشي سكر هبون ما نخشي ضغط هبون بازار كيف هبون يعني عوائل قلة هبون مرة
أريد خدي تواصلها وبيجي تحت شكلين في هناك أريد خدي تجمع بينا
Oni zaraz obrócą tym pick-upem wojskowym, zawieźli tam jedną grupę.
Le régime de Loukachenko instrumentalise de manière inhumaine, et je le dis ici, éhontée, les flux migratoires pour tenter de déstabiliser et de désunir l'Union européenne. C'est intolérable et inacceptable.
Мы не собираем по всему миру беженцев и не привозим в Беларусь, как Польша проинформировала Европейский Союз.
In other news, the EU is calling on China to provide verifiable proof of the whereabouts and welfare of tennis champion Pang Shuai, who has accused a powerful politician of sexual assault. Pang, a 35-year-old Wimbledon and French Open doubles champion, was not seen for more than 2 weeks following her allegations that former Vice Premier Zhang Gaoli, now in his 70s, forced her into sex during a years-long on and off relationship. On Sunday, official photos of a Beijing tennis tournament showed Pang among attendees, and she participated the same day in a video call with the head of the International Olympic Committee. The United Nations, the United States, and Britain have also called for proof of Pang's whereabouts and well-being. China's foreign ministry reacted on Tuesday by saying that people should stop deliberately and maliciously hyping up the controversy around Pang. But Masrali said the requests for reliable information are legitimate and must remain.
Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's arrival on the front line, where government forces are battling insurgents from the northernmost Tigray region, is boosting recruitment for the beleaguered armed forces. As the rebels claim they are advancing towards the capital Addis Ababa, a spokesman for the Tigray People's Liberation Front, or TPLF, posts a video on Twitter allegedly showing masses of government soldiers taken captive. AFP could not, however, independently confirm the accuracy of these images or the claims. Take a look.
በጣም ነው የገረመኝ። እውነቴን ነው የምልህ። መንግስትን ያህል ነገር ወንበሩን፣ ስልጣኑን፣ ዙፋኑን ጥሎ ማለት ነው እቺን ሀገር ለማቆየት ለመኖር አይደለም እሱ በቃ እቺን ሀገር በደሙ አሳልፎ ለመስጠት ሲል በቃ ወደ ጦምባር ተከተሉኝ ብሎን ሲሄድ እኔ አልቅሻለሁ። እኔ ትላንትና እውነቴን ነው የምልህ።
In a related news, Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed on Wednesday reportedly joined the front line where government forces are battling rebels from the Tigray region, prompting U.S.-led international calls for a diplomatic solution and immediate ceasefire to the conflict. The fighting in the north of Africa's second most populous country has killed thousands of people and forced hundreds of thousands into famine-like conditions. Foreign governments have told their citizens to leave amid the escalating war and fears that the Tigrayan rebels could march on the capital, Addis Ababa. Now, state media did not broadcast images of him in the field, and officials have not responded to requests for details about his whereabouts. Addressing reports of Abiy at the front, the U.S. State Department late Wednesday warned there is no military solution to Ethiopia's civil war. On Wednesday, UN Chief Antonio Guterres called for a swift end to the fighting. Let's listen in.
Thank you. Thank you.
El proceso de paz de Colombia me inspira a hacer hoy un llamado urgente a los protagonistas del conflicto en Etiopía a un alto al fuego incondicional e inmediato para salvar el país.
Eagle News will be back with more. Please don't go away.
Alam namin ang iyong pagsisikap. Dama namin ang iyong mga sakripisyo. Kita namin ang pagharap mo sa bawat pagsubok. Kaya sa kabila ng mga hamon ng buhay, nandito kami para umalalay. Kasi katulad mo, gusto rin namin ang magandang bukas para sa kanya. Hatid namin ang dekalidad na edukasyon at makabagong pasilidad sa abot kayang halaga. Kaya huwag ka na mangamba. Sasamahan ka namin tuparin ang mga pangarap niya. Maaasahan mong sulit dito ang mga pinagsikapan mo. Sa aming mga makabagong pasilidad at sistema ng edukasyon. Mailalabas natin ang aking talino at mga kakayahan niya. Kahit sa munting halaga, makakasiguro ka na makakasabay siya sa mabilis na pag-ikot ng mundo. Sa New Era, karamay mo kami sa bawat hamon. Kaagapay mo kami sa bawat hakbang. Kasama mo kami sa bawat ngiti at tagumpay.
Hi, I'm Alex Calleja, isang podcaster, YouTuber, writer, director, at isang stand-up comedian for more than 12 years. Kaya naman, heto na ang funniest nakaball videos! Ang natatanging show na bubusugin ang buong sambayanan sa katatawanan! Ito ang bagong tambayan ng buong pamilya at barkada. Mula Lunes hanggang Biyernes nyo kami makakasama tuwing 4:30 p.m. Dito lang sa Net 25. Dito, mapapanood natin ang best comedy videos na hinanap pa namin sa kasuluk-sulukan ng internet. So ano pang hinihintay nyo? Join na sa pinakabago at pinakamasayang afternoon habit ng tawanan at kulitan, ang funniest nakaball videos.
Welcome back to the news. Cathay Pacific on Thursday said it will slash passenger flights into Hong Kong next month as the city's strict travel curbs continue to keep international travelers away at a time when rivals are seeing their prospects improve. Now, Hong Kong has maintained some of the world's harshest quarantine measures and travel restrictions during the pandemic, which has kept infections low but ensured a business hub that dubs itself Asia's World City has been cut off internationally for the past 20 months. As the peak holiday season approaches, the airline will convert around 1/3 of flights bound for Hong Kong to handle cargo. The South China Morning Post reported that, citing company sources. Outbound flights would remain untouched for now, but with about 620 scheduled in December, the paper said. Now, like most international carriers, Cathay has been hammered by the coronavirus pandemic, wiping out much international travel. But it is especially vulnerable because it has no domestic market to fall back on and is based in an international finance hub that has embraced mainland China's zero COVID plan.
In other business news, Germany lowered its growth estimate for the third quarter today as clouds gathered over the economy with the coronavirus pandemic resurging. The Federal Data Agency said the economy expanded by 1.7% in the July to September period compared to the previous quarter, down 0.1 percentage points from a preliminary figure published last month. The German economy's recovery continued through the summer, the status said in a statement, but growth was decelerating with the third quarter figure easing from 2% posted in the second quarter. With new curbs imposed again in recent days over record new COVID infections, experts have warned that output in the last 3 months of the year will be hard hit. Already, an acute shortage of raw materials was crimping growth in Europe's biggest economy. Germany's Bundesbank is now expecting output to be flat in the fourth quarter. For the full year, the government forecasts that GDP will come in at 2.6% rather than the 3.5% previously predicted.
Back to the Philippines, all qualified beneficiaries of the government's 1 billion peso fuel subsidy program are set to receive their cash cards and one-time grant by December, according to an official of the Land Transportation Franchising and Regulatory Board on Thursday. In a Laging Handa briefing, LTFRB National Capital Region Regional Director Zona Rosette Tamayo said about 85,000 out of the 136,000 beneficiaries of the program, operators of public utility jeepneys or PUJs, have cash cards through the previous Pantawid Pasada program. The rest, she said, are processed by the Land Bank of the Philippines and will be distributed nationwide through local branches of the Land Bank. Take a look.
Sa tala po natin, meron ho tayong 136,000 po na qualified beneficiaries. Ang listahan po na ito ay kompleto na po nang galing sa iba't ibang regions po at sa central office. So, identified na po sila. At 85,000 po out of this 136,000 beneficiaries ay may active na pong account sa Land Bank. Kung kaya't yun po ay lalagyan na lang po noong ating fuel subsidy amounting to 7,200 pesos per unit. Yung remaining po na around 50,000 po, yun po ay kasalukuyang ginagawa na po ng Land Bank noong cards. At sa mga darating na araw po ay maglalabas na ho tayo ng schedule kung saan ho nakalagay ang pangalan at servicing branch kung saan ho nila kukunin ang kanilang card. Kung mapapansin nyo, wide ho ang ating distribution ng cards sa iba't ibang regions po, ay iba't ibang branches din po ng Land Bank ang ating na-identify para maiwasan din po na dumugin po ang ating mga Land Bank branches para sa releasing po ng ating PPP cards. Ito po ay fuel subsidy po, kaya reiterate, pinapaalalahanan po natin ang ating mga beneficiaries na ito pong nakaload po sa inyong cards ay maaari lamang pong gamitin sa pag-purchase po ng fuel. Hindi ho ito po pwedeng gamitin i-withdraw sa ATM or gamitin pambili ng ibang gamit at ito po ay strictly fuel subsidy or para lang ho pambayad ng mga binili ho ninyong krudo. Now, kung meron hong paglabag, wag naman po sana, i-report po sa amin yan ng LBP dahil makikita ho sa transaction history po ng kanilang mga accounts kung ito po ay nagamit sa krudo or sa ibang bagay po. Kung meron ho kaming makita, syempre po ipatatawag natin ng mga operator, makaka-apekto rin ho ito sa mga subsequent po sanang fuel subsidy program po ng ating gobyerno dahil pinag-uusapan na rin ho yan for next year na kung maaari ho maipagpatuloy ho natin ang ganitong programa. Kaya ayaw ho natin na mangyari ho na ma-flag po, no? Tinatawag natin ma-flag yung kanilang account. Sa ngayon, kasi po we're looking at a long-term program for fuel subsidy.
LeBron James returned from the first suspension of his NBA career to score 39 points Wednesday and lead the Lakers to a 124-116 overtime victory over the Indiana Pacers. Russell Westbrook added 20 points for the Lakers, who trailed by 12 in the third quarter but rallied despite the absence of ailing star Anthony Davis, who missed the game with flu-like symptoms. Indiana, led by Malcolm Brogdon's 28 points, were in control for the most of the night, with the Lakers taking their first lead of the game at 101-100 on Malik Monk's three-pointer with 4 minutes and 30 seconds left to play. James then dug in, delivering a pair of free throws, a driving finger roll, layup, and a pull-up three-pointer as the Lakers pushed the lead to 110-104 with 1 minute 17 seconds left in regulation. But the Pacers weren't finished, and Dominican Chris Duarte drained an unlikely off-balance three-pointer at the buzzer to force overtime. A fired-up James scored 8 of the Lakers' 12 points in the extra session, draining a pair of three-pointers for the win in his return from a one-game ban as his team fell to the Knicks on Tuesday. The victory saw the Lakers finish their 5-game road trip 2-3.
A Russian Soyuz rocket carrying the new Prichal docking module for the International Space Station blasted off from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan on Wednesday, according to the Roscosmos Space Agency. A live feed from Roscosmos showed the carrier rocket taking off against a dark evening sky from the Russia-leased spaceport at the scheduled time of 13:06 GMT. Prichal, which means pier in Russian, is the second permanent addition to the Russian segment of the ISS this year after the long-awaited arrival of the Nauka Lab module. The module's journey to the ISS will take 2 days and is scheduled for automated docking at the Nadir port of the Nauka module on Friday, November 26, according to Roscosmos. According to Roscosmos as well, the 5-ton docking module can accommodate up to 5 spacecraft and will also deliver various cargo to the ISS, including food rations, repair tool, and hygiene supplies. Russia has said it intends to create its own orbital station, launched in 1998 and involving Russia, the United States, Canada, Japan, and the European Space Agency. The ISS is one of the largest international collaborations in science and engineering.
And finally, in our news, Seoul has started trialing small robots as teaching aids in kindergartens, a pilot project the city government says will help prepare the next generation for a high-tech future. Take a look.
이제 가끔가다 저도 동화를 읽어주거나 하기 좀 힘들어할 때 휴머노이드가 이제 동화도 되게 재미있게 읽어주고 그런 목소리나 이런 것도 바꿔가면서 읽어주니까 그런 부분에 있어서는 전 좋았습니다. 네. 로봇이 어린이집에 오고 나서 아이들이 로봇을 작동하고 그리고 뭔가 로봇과 함께하는 놀이를 통해서 창의력도 많이 키워졌고 그리고 이제
노래 부르라고 하는 노래도 잘 부르고 춤추라고 하면 같이 춤도 같이 추고 그리고 의자에 앉고 저가 만든 거에 의자에 앉으라고 하면 딱 앉아요. 로봇이랑 같이 놀아서 기분이 좋았어요. 컴퓨터 보는 거랑 노래하는 거 좋아해요. 많이 재밌어요.
그러니까 선생님을 대처한다고 저희는 생각하지는 않고요. 요거를 선생님을 도와주는 거죠. 그러니까 걸어오기 위해서는 그 매뉴얼이나 이런 이제 저것들을 저희가 올해 시범 교육, 시범 사업이나 내년도 좀 해봐가면서 그런 것들을 많이 개발을 좀 해야 될 것 같습니다. 그 앞으로의 미래는 그 이런 AI나 이런 도구들을 잘 다루는 이런 것도 굉장히 중요하다고 봅니다. 그래서 이 어린이집에서 그 먼저 미리 좀 이렇게 학습하고, 그러니까 학습은 아니죠. 뭐 이렇게 경험해보고 체험해본 게 굉장히 앞으로 좀 청소년 뭐 성인이 돼서도 굉장히 중요한 그 경험이 된다고 생각합니다.
The Alpha Mini is just 24.5 centimeters tall and can dance, lead sing-alongs, recite stories, and even teach kung fu moves as children mimic its push-ups and one-legged balances. The robots are being trialed in 300 Seoul nurseries and childcare centers, with the government recommending the program for children aged 3 to 5. The Alpha Mini has been adopted as part of a daily schedule for the class of 4 to 5-year-old students at Maru, with its ability to, quote, fart on command being a highlight during playtime. Did I just say that word?
What is it with farts and kids? Well, that's it for tonight's broadcast. Thank you so much for joining us. I am CJ Hero. The news continues tomorrow.
And at the end of the day, there remains so much more to be grateful for. I'm Alma Angeles, and we live in interesting times.
This program is supported by SMC Global Power,